Argentine, one of your hosts here at Sci-Fi Shaw in Chicago.
And I'm Paul Yovanik, also a partner in Chicago.
So today we have another quick take. We have a huge opinion coming out of the Seventh Circuit in the TCPA world. The case revolves around this split that we've had for the last year since the McKesson decision from the Supreme Court over our calls, text messages under 227C.
Yeah.
Right? And so what the issue here is 227C5 is where the private right of action sits under the TCPA for do not call registry and those regulations under the CFR. And so when the McKesson decision came out and said the FCC is mere guidance, courts should look to the statutory interpretation of the TCPA when they're deciding, how to apply the regulations. One of the big issues that came out of that was, can text messages under that section fit under the private right of action?
Yeah. Can they, do they? And we had a decision in the Central District of Illinois say no.
Yeah. And that's because the language itself of Section 227C5 specifically refers to telephone call.
Right.
Right? Whereas other sections of the TCPA talk about calls and messages, this specific private right of action says the words telephone call.
Right. And again, that's something that the Seventh Circuit really called out because they said, the TCPA defines telephone solicitation broadly to include telephone calls and messages to encourage the sale or purchase of goods and services. The court emphasized that Congress used the broader phrase telephone solicitation elsewhere in 227C, but in 227C5, it chose the narrower telephone call.
Right.
And that, it's one of those things where the Seventh Circuit really harped on, clearly Congress knew the differences because it was using them in different sections, but here in 227C5, telephone call was that narrow definition that they used.
Right. It's a really strict textual opinion that's great for the defense.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think we've seen other district courts weigh in on this idea that, why would that be more narrow than the rest of it?
Right.
And what the district courts have said and what the Seventh Circuit seems to agree with is just because the TCPA is regulating something like messages or giving right direction as to businesses about what they should be doing doesn't mean there needs to be a private right of action.
Right. No, that's exactly it.
And so that's kind of what we're dealing with here of, yes, as a business, you still need to pay attention to your SMS platforms and
Sure.
whether or not someone is on the do not call registry and whether or not someone is opting out. But it doesn't mean that someone can bring a cause of action under 227C5 for those text message claims.
Right. I mean, this is just a huge decision because of how many class actions, businesses are defending on the text message under 227C5. It's just, this is huge.
Right. And we've seen the TCPA kind of trends move away from 227B,
Yep.
right? After that decision years ago about kind of redefining the definition of automatic telephone dialing system.
Right.
And all of a sudden the shift came to 227C5 and is someone registered on the do not call list and is someone opting out and still receiving text messages after that. And so, in the past few years, that's been the real trend of cases that we've seen more so than those auto dialing cases.
Yeah, and we've seen courts, I think, kind of take this approach where of course, text messages can mean, or telephone calls can mean text messages, but also this decision really kind of reminded that in 1991, when the TCPA was enacted, there were no text messages. So
Right.
it's not even, couldn't even really be an extension. It's, again, I think as we've always said, it's like a common theme of old statutes, newer technology, and the plaintiffs bar trying to kind of fit that in. And I think some courts may be trying to say, okay, yeah, I think it's close enough. I think it's what it probably was intended
Right.
to evolve into. But as you said, kind of this purely textual decision of saying, well, wait a minute, let's actually look at what the statute says.
Right.
And that's what the Seventh Circuit reminded as well.
And the Seventh Circuit actually really did do a dive into those other cases out there, the
Yes.
other circuits that have said calls can be texts. You can interpret those the same. And what the Seventh Circuit found a significant distinction there was that those cases all involved 227B.
Right.
Where the language is different, right?
Right.
They focused in on the idea that under this 227C5 language, it specifically says telephone, like more than one telephone call. There is no debate there, right, that they are, talking about anything else, according to the Seventh Circuit. So, we have the Ninth Circuit out there that has kind of broadly said calls can be texts.
Exactly.
But that was in the context of 227B.
Right.
So the Seventh Circuit is really the first one that has analyzed this issue under Section C.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to see moving forward is cases in other circuits and in the district courts, showing the court, hey, the Seventh Circuit has weighed in on this. Obviously not necessarily binding before those other district courts and other circuits, but it's certainly going to be something that will be raised and then likely brought up in those other circuits, and hopefully, for the defense side, there's going to be an agreement among the circuits of saying, well, yeah, the plain language of
Right.
227C5 is, telephone call.
Right. Yeah. So we'll keep everyone posted as this progresses, but this is a big decision for those in the Seventh Circuit, and as you said, potential very persuasive authority beyond.
Absolutely.